Today on Active Ingredients, I'm joined by Alexandre Montague, one of the most purpose-driven and inspiring CEOs I've ever had the joy to speak with. Alexandre's mission is bold, but beautifully simple, helping people see better across their lifetime, with a particular focus on preventing childhood myopia. From Paris to Tokyo, from startups to scaling multi-billion-dollar businesses, Alex's story is built on taking chances, building high-performing teams, and creating meaningful impact, I would say. In this episode, we explore how a single comment from a teacher in high school sparked a lifelong passion for Japan, and how serendipity and curiosity led him into life sciences. Also how integrity, transparency, and empathy have shaped his leadership style across these continents. This one's a masterclass in empowering others, building culture, and using purpose as a business accelerator. Let's get into it. Today on Active Ingredients, I'm joined by Alexandre Montague, a man who comes with a fantastic reputation as a truly purpose-driven leader and CEO primarily in the vision care space. His mission, helping people see better throughout their lifetime, with a special focus on preventing childhood myopia. With a career built on scaling and growing sustainable businesses, Alexandre has led teams across global markets and lived in some amazing locations. He's clearly passionate about creating differentiation in competitive markets, shaping company culture, and driving engagement, what I think is the ultimate business accelerator. Alexandre is here to share his leadership journey, the strategies behind high-performing teams, and what it really takes to bring a vision to life. Hello, Alex. How are you?
Tom, I'm good. Thank you for this very kind and nice introduction.
No problem, no problem. You've got a whole career to talk about. I'm very excited. You and I have spoken a few times before, and I've really enjoyed our conversations before. But before we start the Active Ingredients podcast, I always like to ask this one question. Okay, what do you think are the three key ingredients of a successful leader and why?
I would say the first thing that is really important to me, and it's also something that I look for when I'm bringing new team members, for example, or building my own team. One is really integrity. That's an extremely important point. The second part is transparency. Maybe we'll have the opportunity to discuss about it a bit later on, but transparency is extremely important to me because it helps you build a clear path for your teams. It helps bring a lot of, I would say, trust into an organization. And you were just mentioning 1 minute ago, performing organizations. I think it also helps drive better performance for the organization. And the third part would really be empathy, I would say. Really, really important to be able to connect with the teams, understand what their needs are, and make sure that we are constantly listening to their feedback and to the issues that they face, so that we can basically address their needs and make sure that they're being successful, because this is what is making us successful as leaders as well.
Yeah, love it. Integrity, transparency, and empathy. So three things that we're going to really dig into at some point throughout this conversation. I absolutely can't wait for it. But before we get into you being the leader that you now are, can we talk about, before your career, what was life like at school and university? What kind of, person were you then? And did you see any clues that would get you to the point that you're at now?
I was a very normal young French person. I was born in the suburbs of Paris, educated in France, in pretty, I would say, standard schools. I was passionate about tennis at that time when I was young. So there was this period of my life where I wanted to be either a tennis player or an F1 driver. That passed pretty quickly, but that's how everything started. I was not I wouldn't call myself a very, very good student. I was pretty good actually when I was until maybe 10 years old, and then it got bad probably. I became a teen, probably a bit stupid. And for some reason, things got really, really good again just when I hit high school, at the time when I needed to be better so that I could enter a proper a business school, which I managed to do. But there was no sign about what my future has been, except that my father desperately wanted me to become, CEO of a company someday. So, if he were still alive today, he would probably be proud. But that did not really motivate me, I must say. So I just ended up in that role at the very end, but that was not a focus, I would say, of my life. And so that's how I got there.
So you've got tennis, Formula One, CEO, all of these things rattling around in your brain, and then you went to business school.
That
Is
is
that
correct.
right?
Yeah.
And how were those formative years? What was that part of your life like?
So I must go back to one small thing that really completely transformed, I would say, my youth. And it was a very, we all have these moments in our lives, the things that are completely not expected, but you realize after 15 years how it has completely transformed everything that you have done. I was in a humanities class with a teacher. I still remember her name. I'll keep it confidential for because I don't think it's proper to share it. But I can still remember that I was in my high school. I can still remember the class where I was sitting. I can still remember the seat where I was sitting. And that teacher started to talk to us about Japan. And she made statements about Japan and said, okay, today we're going to have a class about Japan, its economy, its people. And at some stage, I can't remember exactly how it came about, but she said, oh, Japanese people tend to be very conservative, very consensual, and they all do the same thing all the time. There's no diversity, no originality. You're just supposed to follow the rules and the system and don't try to do anything else. And the moment she told me this, for some reason, I thought, nah, I need to check this out on my own. I can't believe this. And from that very day, I started to read articles about Japan in the press, in newspapers, in magazines, whatever it was, and I started to get really passionate about the country. Started to read books, about Japanese society and Japanese geography. Japanese history came a bit later. And when I was going, taking the path to go to a business school, there was this one single business school that I absolutely wanted to get into because that business school had a link with Japan. And they were taking students after the first year, so you'd just be studying Japanese 3 hours per week. And at the end of the first year, they had an office in Japan, and they would send you over there to do a training in a Japanese, an internship actually in a Japanese company. So I was obsessed actually with getting into that school. That school was unfortunately one of the toughest business schools to get into in France, but I was like, look, I don't care. I'm going to get there. And I just went through my preparatory class, worked really, really hard for 5 months, and then let it calm down a little bit at the end, passed the exam. And I always say that funny story, which is that I entered that school. So that school you had 30 points that you had to hit. 6 points were about English language as a first foreign language. Within the English as a first foreign language, you had 4 different exams in it, all representing 1/4 of the points. And then you have what was a multiple choice question about grammar. And this had 60 questions. If I had had one question wrong in that multiple choice question exam, I would not have entered that school. That's how close I got into it. So
Wow.
got there, and again, just luck, right? Sometimes you have the feeling that somebody's watching over you and making sure that you're getting where you want to go. So, and that's how I ended up in that business school. They were great years, not to go back to your question earlier on, because it was a business school that had a reputation for not having money at all. So whenever you wanted to go, build a club or do a sort of associative type of activities, they would give you 50 francs at the time. So that would be 10 euros today, and tell you, hey, Alex, you want to do this? Go do your stuff, get your sponsors, talk to companies, get some money from them. That's all you're going to get from us. We're not helping any further. And if you get big enough, we might give you a small room for you to actually do some work. In the meantime, do it in your rooms or with your friends. And we sort of took over the school newspaper at that time. That was pretty, really crappy thing. They were all in black and white, type of, old style, I would say, a school newspaper at the time. They were printing them on copy machines. And one day altogether, we managed to get, we had this wonderful issue one day where there was lots mixture of fantastic drawings, societal issues, informative issues, school-related issues, and it was actually a very, very good issue that we had at that time. And we took it to there was an association in France that was here to promote actually young journalists, and they were taking all of the school newspapers across France and making a contest between them. And we won the first prize actually that year because that issue was actually so good. And we got, I can still remember that, 40,000 francs. And with this, we invested into a new Macintosh, all of the stuff that we need to do to basically do a newspaper. And and then we took it for another couple of years. But it was really a great time. And then the time that we spent in Japan, that was really fun as well. So, first experience over there, about 4 months. So, all fantastic memories. And of course, the learning was really good as well. But I think I got more out of the school experience from all of the associative experience that I've had. The traveling, the work that I was doing on the side to make sure that I could pay my rent, things like this. This was very great educational experience, I would say.
Yeah, I love that. Because I asked this question at the beginning to see if there are any clues to where you have got to now.
No,
And I love it. I love this because, for you to be able to think of that moment in the humanities class where the light of Japan was lit in you at that moment. But then also I can hear a lot of entrepreneurialism in what sounds like quite like a scrappy, business school where you've got to go and work hard to go and create the opportunities. It sounds like they've been really pivotal moments for you.
they have been, yes. And I think everything was a bit about, believing some things and just going after them. And
Yep.
and simply saying, let's take the chance. Let's just try to make this work. Small moments in life where you think, this is the moment, now or never is the moment to sort of pivot, or now or never is the moment to believe in something. And that has driven, the rest of my career later on. We'll probably be talking about it. But, it's small things. And sometimes you have the feeling, I need to get on that train. You don't know why, but you know it. And it was all of these things that I have done, whether there was Japanese or working for the school newspaper, all of these small things that I have done were really, I would say, just happened like that. And I thought, okay, it's good. Let's take a chance.
Yeah. Create opportunities and then take them when
Exactly,
they come up.
exactly.
Love it. We will be talking about that because it's not luck. I just think that you have worked extremely hard to get into an opportunity where these things present themselves to you quite a lot. But let's start, okay, with your first step into life sciences or into your career. And I think the listeners will now know where that role was. But can you just explain to us your kind of first step into the industry and first step into
Yeah.
leadership?
So if you don't mind, Tom, I'll just go back for 30 seconds to explain what brought me to Japan, because everything was out of, you said it's not luck, you work hard for it. Maybe I did. But when I finished business school, I went to the army in France. At some stage, I had a bit of time off. And the Japanese government was providing to students, French students, scholarships, 10 scholarships per year, to go and study in Japan. And most of these scholarships were taken by people who were doing advanced Japanese studies, and they were sort of the holy grail for them, because the scholarship was a very good one, and everybody wanted to have it. So one day I was at the army, but I had a week off, and a friend of mine called me and said, Alex, tomorrow I'm going to the Japanese embassy. I'm going to take an application form to actually get that scholarship. Do you remember we talked about the scholarship in the past? Yeah, I heard about it. And she told me, you want to come with me to pick it up? I said, well, you want me to come with you? And I was probably, I still remember the moment. I was probably playing Tetris on the computer and telling her on the phone, I'm really busy right now, but okay, And she sort of convinced me. I said, okay, I'll go with you and go with you to the Japanese embassy. Went there. She took an application form and she looks at me and says, why don't you take one as well? I'm like, okay, let's take the application form. Took the application form. We had 24 hours to fill it in and submit it to the Japanese embassy. So I started to, say, okay, let's take my chance as well. Let's try to, fill in that application form and send it over the next day. And it so happens that year, they moved the number of scholarships from 10 to 20. They were looking for 10 more students. But what the Japanese embassy said, or the Japanese education ministry said is, we want people who have a different background than advanced Japanese knowledge. We want people from business, art, engineers, telecommunications, journalists, you name it. I said, okay. And that year, there were the standard 200 or 250 people with high advanced, Japanese degree trying to get their 10 scholarships. And there were exactly 10 of us trying to get the remaining 10. So I got the scholarship to go to Japan without really any effort because we were the only ones who had applied because it was the first year they were looking for people with a different background. And I ended up in Japan like this. Went to a university, because it was the Ministry of Education, you could pick the university that you wanted. You wanted to go to the best university in town, they would just put you there because it was an order from the Education Ministry. I just picked the one that had links with my former business school. Ended up there, studied 1 year, and decided that after 1 year of extensive Japanese studies, I thought, time for me to work a little bit. I had a very good friend of mine at that time who was, paying for all the dinners, paying for all the drinks all the time because I was a student. I thought I need to be able to pay for all this on my own. So let's start working. And I got a job offer at that time, which was, I would say, a dream job offer for a French person from a very, very reputable French luxury goods company that told me, you know what, after 6 or 7 interviews, they told me, Alexandre, we'd like to create a position for you. We want to give you the job of product manager for champagne and cognac in Japan. And for a French person coming out of business school, everybody wants to do this, right? Why wouldn't you want to, work with, champagne and cognac, and it's glitzy. You can go to bars and restaurants and meet good-looking girls, and perfect, right? And I said, okay. So I got that offer at that time. And because I was a stupid prick and arrogant probably a little bit at the time, I told him, can you maybe give me 1 week? Because, I have other offers, which I did not have. But I just wanted to, show that I was, I was successful and other companies wanted to hire me. They did not. But the whole strategy was, anyway, after 1 week, I'll call them back. And I thought, of course I will join you. And right in the meantime, on a Tuesday evening, my mother calls me from France and tells me, oh, Alex, you remember that restaurant where we go to quite often together? I went there yesterday with your father. He doesn't talk much. So I talked to the guy who was sitting right next to us and asked him how his wine was. And the guy said, the wine is okay. And they started to talk to each other. And he said he was actually the CEO of a life science company based in Tokyo in charge of the Asia Pacific region. And I talked to him and I said, oh, you know what? My son is in Tokyo. He said, oh, really? Your son is in Tokyo? What is he doing? He said, well, he just graduated business school. He's looking for a job now. So he gave her his business card, which he sent to me by fax at that time. And the guy said, ask him to come to my office on Thursday. I'm flying back tomorrow, and I'll meet him for a couple of hours. And went to see him. He has become a mentor, all along my life. He's still a very good friend of mine today. He's retired. But had a couple of hours of conversation with him. We talked about, I can still remember, cats, cars, Paris, Barcelona, food. And in the last 5 minutes, he looks at me and says, okay, so look, we're doing operation microscopes for ophthalmology and neurosurgery. This is a catalog of the product. I'm not sure whether you're interested in it, but if you want to join our company, I really need somebody with your profile. Are you interested to join us? And that's how I entered life science, Tom.
Wow. So did your mother get the recruitment or headhunter's fee for, she should have, or at least a bottle of wine?
I'm sure I have given that back to her over time in the past 35 years. But she'd always like to say, I'm your best recruiter. So, right.
Yes, couldn't agree more. Because I mean, part of the conversation that we wanted to have today was how you create that positive serendipity, as we say, like taking your 1 in a million chance. If I look at this already, you're already filtering through a life of taking these opportunities and ending up in this moment. So you've turned down champagne and cognac that you know very well, I'd imagine, at this point in your life. And then you've gone into life sciences in something that you didn't know about.
I had no clue what it was. There was nothing that ever told me before. There was no sign that I would end up in life science. But I got really passionate about it because of the fact that you're actually, helping the lives of people. You're helping them, overcome challenges, overcome issues that they have. One of the most frequent operation that I had seen is called a cataract surgery. It's an ophthalmology surgery. It's a quite now very, very well managed procedure. But what is amazing is you see the result, the positive result of that surgery, the moment you get out of that operation room. And just seeing the smiles on the faces of the people who go through cataract surgery is just amazing. And it just tells you, the good things that we can do, in life for other people. So I think that was really a motivating experience.
Love that. And it's also quite clear, we haven't touched on this previously, but it's quite clear that if that person that brought you into the role and brought you into the industry is still a mentor and still someone that you speak to now, would you say that their involvement in your career has been quite pivotal as well?
Absolutely. Um, so his name is Larry. So I don't want to talk about that person. So Larry has been amazing with me. He taught me, the basics of business. He taught me everything about focusing on your customers. He taught me about focusing on your brands. He taught me about, taking bold steps, taking chances. I don't like to use the word risk. I like to use taking chances. They come with risks, but it's about taking chances. Yeah, nobody is looking actively for a risk, but the people are looking for opportunities. And at that time, for example, he was very supportive. We created, me and the Japanese product manager. We were working, in duo, I would say. We created a new category in the Japanese market where we said, this product has never been used in the dental field. Let's try to see how we can push this into the dental field. And we went to the US and we got our own trainings. We even went to trainings where the doctor did not want to show to the other trainees that we were not doctors, but people from the industry. So he called us Dr. Montague and Dr. Cohn, just to make people believe that we were actually doctors having the training. It was really fun. But, we went through these dental trainings and we did a little bit of our, experiences and stuff like that. So it was really good. And we were very successful at it as well. Because, when you have a mentor or leader who is supportive, who helps you and says, look, go for it. We'll support you whatever happens. We have the means of doing this. Of course, the company was fairly profitable, so probably compared to other companies, they had a higher tolerance to potential failures. But he said, "Look, I think if you guys think that there is an opportunity, go for it, and we'll support you." And Larry has been fantastic for this because he has always been, pushing us to try new things, pushing us to discover things and to take chances again. And so he's always been really, really good. That was my first, impactful leader over time, and one who was really focused on our successes.
Yeah, I love that. Because it's quite interesting the amount of discussions that I've had over the decades that I've been working in executive search with leaders, often, or more often than not, there are topics of bad leadership and people learning from leaders where they haven't done things in the way that they would, and that actually shapes them as a leader for the future. Whereas you seem to have landed a really good mentor as your first leader, and you've probably had different leaders, that have been indifferent over the years, but it's very impressive that, that first person is still in your mind now as a mentor and somebody that really gave you the opportunity to go and take those chances.
Tom, I think to the point that you were just making, we identify bad leadership because it's very visible. And we don't identify good leadership immediately because it's actually, good leadership is about being flawless. You should not be able to identify good leadership, if you know what I mean. Good leadership is about making sure that things are going flawlessly, smoothly, that people are being supported and are, being successful. You don't realize it when you're in the middle of it. You realize it 5 or 10 years later when you realize how, it's quite amazing how these people have been supporting me, how they have been, driving my career and my successes. And, so I think that's the reason why we talk more about bad leadership than good leadership. That doesn't mean that there is more bad leadership than good leadership. It's just that it's a different type of visibility, I would say.
Yeah, and it does stick. Yeah, it does stick with you. As you said, that kind of good leaders are in the background doing all of the good stuff a lot of the time. And we'll talk about that because I think you've got an extremely good viewpoint on that. But it seems as though, you and I have spoken before, and you told me that people, opportunities, and connections is what life is all about. And I think that that's clear. You've got all of these connecting elements of your life so far that, have got you to this point where you're now living in Asia, working in life sciences. So what happened next? Just give us a little bit of an elevator of where your career went, where you lived, and what was in store over the next couple of years.
So with my first company, I was in Japan and Korea for a while, just 1 year in Korea. And at the end, I needed a change because of the fact that there was, I was in charge of a joint venture, but it was a bit too political for me. So I was looking for a different type of opportunity. And I think that at that time, again, it was just meeting the right person at the right time. And we sort of, there was a good click, I would say, between us. There was a small French company, and the CEO of that company, he sold that company in the meantime. He's still always a very good friend of mine as well. I was with him. I was with him over New Year, actually, just last year. They were looking for somebody to set up their operations in Japan because they had no subsidiary there. And there was a person who was asked to do the hiring. He was not a recruiter at all. He was a researcher for a French research institute that just happened to be in Japan at the time. He was a friend of the CEO, and he was in charge of recruiting the person. And I sent my resume, and then we connected, and we talked during hours and hours and hours about the fact that, the type of research that he was doing, and the fact that he went to, Russia to study rivers in Russia, and officially, it was only to study the impact of rivers and the environment and stuff like that. But in reality, they were actually doing tests on the water to see whether there was radioactive material in there, but they couldn't say so. But of course, this was made for the French government. I mean, sort of this interesting research person, and it went really well. And I think that when they hired me, not because I was their favorite candidate at that time, but they had two favorite candidates, and I was the cheapest one. So sometimes. You must simply accept the fact that you have been chosen because you're cheap, and that's okay. And this was actually, I would say, the defining moment in my career in general, because this was an experience where I really started, these old movies in the 80s and 90s. You start with a desk, a phone, in a free office that is provided to you by the Japanese government for a maximum period of 3 months. And after 3 months, they tell you, we're going to kick you out, so you start to find your own office, find your own customers. And I started like this, and nothing else. And they told me, here's $100,000. Make sure you get the company profitable as quickly as possible. And that's it. And started to get that business, took over a little bit of business that was done by the previous distributor. Started to build a team. We grew the team to about 11, 12 people after 4 or 5 years, I think. But it was really a defining moment, because it was, what made me a business entrepreneur, business developer, the way you want to name it. You just look for ways of structuring your commercial approach so that you can actually get into the first customer that will then have a halo effect on the other customers around. And when you get the first one and the other one say, oh, hold on, that seems to be a good product, they all want it. And slowly over time, you basically go like this. Yeah? In the meantime, you build your team, you find the right people. When you're so small, you never find the right ones. Japan was very, very difficult. They had this fear of startups, of young companies. So, we just had to find the guys and the girls who were actually ready for a completely different type of experience, and again, taking chances, and you had fun. And, Tom, during a year and a half, so this company was selling external hard drives for Macintosh users, mostly. Because we were using an interface at that time that was called FireWire. So nobody uses these things anymore, but that's what it was. It was a very fast interface. So that company with their hard drives, external hard drives, during a year and a half, it feels like every single day I was dreaming about hard drives. Every single day. Every single day I would arrive in the office in the morning. The first thing I would go to the fax machine, because at that time you'd get orders by fax, and sometimes by EDI, but most of the time by fax machine. I'd go to the fax machine and see what are the orders that we got during the night. And sometimes we got some, and sometimes we didn't. and it was just a complete obsession. And it made me understand how these entrepreneurs, the people who build their businesses, I completely get it. They're completely obsessed with what they're doing. The success, they think about it nonstop. It's very difficult to get out of it. Which also taught me after a while, quite important, even when you are in that mode, to take a little bit of time to yourself and try to disconnect actually from what you're trying to do every single day, because you can get so passionate about it that you never forget about it. Yeah? So really important to do a bit of cutoff, I would say, with what you do on a daily basis, even when you're a young entrepreneur. I'm sure that these guys now, they know how to do it much better than I could when I was young. But yeah, and then after about 14 months, we made the company profitable, and then everything went really well, and left after 7 years. And then I went back to life science at that time. Again, I was about to make a company back into the consumer segment, work in the apparel industry for a big Japanese group. And the moment where it was my transition period, one of my former colleagues, not my former boss, but my former colleagues at my first company, called me and said, "Alex, hold on. We heard that you're on the market. We heard that you're between two jobs. You need to come back. You need to help us build that ophthalmic business for us in Japan, Korea, help us in China. We need you in Asia. So come on, what would it take for you to join us?" And so we just discussed about it. And at the end, I said, okay, it's all about people that you trust. The other company could have been a great experience. I could have done a completely different career had I been there. But I was happy to be back in the eye care segment, and try to contribute to better lives for people, and it was good. So that's how I got into the ophthalmic field, and I've been there now for about 18 years across 3 different companies.
Yeah, and then when you look at that, you think of, the working in Japan in that startup environment on your own with a desk and a phone ready to go. You then fast forward to your CEO position where you're managing or you're leading a group of over 20,000 people. How did that happen? Like, there's obviously a lot of, taking chances. There's that, bit of luck thrown in there. But if you fast forward through those 18 years, what an opportunity you've then been able to create for yourself.
Tom, I think it's leaders who believed in me that drove my career. It's all about people. I think that I built a little of credibility to myself when I showed that I was able to take a business from zero to 15 million US dollars. People saw in me a business developer. People saw in me somebody who was identifying opportunities, creating categories, and able to I would say build businesses out of this. But mostly it's because I've had the chance of being with fantastic leaders who have been believing in me, supporting me, and giving me as much as they could, at least what I needed to be successful, that I had this career. When I left Japan and that company at the time, I was poached by the market leader in the ophthalmic lens segment. They brought me to Singapore, and after a year and a half, what they did is they put me in charge of a region that was called META, Middle East, Turkey, and Africa, and lots of emerging markets in Eastern Europe as well. So it was the same thing. They saw the profile that I had. They saw my passion to, as a builder, as a creator of business, as somebody who wanted to achieve growth. And they said, let's give it to him and see what he can do with it. And they supported me so well. I had 2 leaders at that time, Patrick and Eric, and they have just been absolutely amazing. And there was such a trust relationship between us that all of the the difficult conversation, the difficult decisions, the important decisions, we could take everything on the phone. We just take the phone, talk 20 minutes, boom, boom, no email, no paperwork. The trust was so high. I can still remember having done an $80 million acquisition on the phone. And the only question that I was, it's not as if we started from nothing at all, but I called, I said, look, this is the valuation that we have. This is the company. I think this makes a lot of sense strategically because we'll bring this and this and that to our product portfolio. It will expand our capabilities in the region. It was in Turkey at that time. And the only question that Eric asked me was, are you sure about this? Are you good with the strategy? You believe in the entrepreneur? Yes or no? I said, yeah, I believe in them. He said, then go for it. And it was done. So, and when you have that type of support, and again, it was not coming out of nowhere. Yeah? It's because we have built that trust relationship between us. It's because we have been, I've been able to deliver over time the results that he was expecting. But the moment you're able to be transparent, explain what you're trying to achieve, and be very candid about it, and genuine about whatever you do, people tend to trust you. And I think that has helped me a lot in my career at that time. And then the company took me to France because they thought that I needed a bit of experience of more mature markets. And it was already a pretty big company, about more than 300 million euros per year. Quite a complex market environment as well, where you had to deal with governments, insurance companies, customers, doctors, so a massive amount of stakeholders that you had to manage. And that was fantastic experience as well. Yeah, and then, the number 2 on the field saw that I hope they saw that I was doing an okay job in France at that time. And one day they called me and say, we're looking for a CEO to take our global outfit, and you'd be interested in doing this. Again, through a connection, by the way. Never, I don't think that I have ever been recruited by a recruiter. It has always been through people connections.
Which breaks my heart a little bit as a headhunter. But also, I think that I would always say that your network knows you the best, okay? But also, they can create the opportunity. Also, it's then down to you to give back as well.
Yes.
I think in any kind of we call it executive connectivity, but we think that the best executive leaders have the best executive connectivity and are often the ones that place themselves in their next job. But I'm keen to talk to you about, so you've now spent, before you moved into the number 2 player, you've spent a lot of time in this part of the industry. You've got really good trust built with your leaders and your teams. I'd like to tap into the purpose of these organizations and how that has helped shape you as a leader as well, because I know that you're very passionate about the whole segment of the industry and have only got more passionate as you've grown into the roles that you've been working in.
When I was working for Essilor in the Middle East and Africa, at that time it was driven by the group in general. They were starting to put much more emphasis on giving back to the communities, giving back to society, and encouraging, I would say, awareness activities about proper eye care, develop access, which is also something we're doing in my own region, because part of what I was doing with the teams was to build infrastructure to provide better eye care to people. It's a good thing to be willing to sell eyeglasses, but you need people to be able to do prescription and to do dispensing of eyeglasses if you want to sell them. So we had to build that infrastructure. We had to train people to and find good partners in every country to make sure that we would achieve that result. When you work in Africa, you have a huge variety of countries and cultures, and not everybody can afford whatever they want over there. You have people who are really, I would say, needy in the region. So a few times per year, what we're doing is we're organizing camps, eye care camps with the teams. Within our team, sometimes we had optometrists, so people who could on their own do refraction and dispensing of ophthalmic equipment. And we're working with local partners, and we would go to difficult areas in the suburbs of Nairobi. We'd go to different areas difficult areas in Senegal, in the Ivory Coast, and we would do camps where we would have 2,000 kids lined up, and we would do all of them a quick eye check, quick eye test. If there was a problem, we would send them to an optometrist. If the problem was simple, we would provide glasses for free, and if it was a bit more complicated, we'd make sure they would be connected with an ophthalmologist in the country. Not that many, but at least we're trying to make the link. And when you go, when you go to these areas, when you go to schools where you have 60 to 70 kids, sitting in the class with one teacher who's passionate about trying to help people, but they don't have the means. It's a difficult environment. But the kids are so happy to be here. Yeah? You
Yep.
you see the smile on their faces. It's just I would say, an amazing experience to be there and to have the feeling that you can actually help them, support them, and change just a little bit their life. Yeah? And I remember whenever we were going to these schools and we talked to the teachers, one of the things that we're trying to identify is potentially myopia. Children in these areas are usually not myopic. It's quite rare. The prevalence of myopia in more rural areas in Africa is quite low overall, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And some of the kids can have other eye problems, I would say. And we'll always tell the teacher, look at the kids who are always trying to sit in the first row. Because the kids who are very, very focused on sitting in the first row are the ones who have issues reading the blackboard. And they're usually myopic. That's how you identify myopic children in a school. That's the first sign. Yeah? Always trying to sit in the first row because otherwise they cannot follow what's happening. So all these discussions, we're talking to the teachers and connecting with them and connecting with the school heads, the teachers, and seeing all of these kids that were happy. Of course, we're giving them small presents, so of course that would bring a different type of smile on their faces. And that just, it's a very rewarding and life-changing experience, I would say. And we've done this quite a few times. And from that moment, I realized how powerful, I'm afraid to use the word, I'll still use it, how powerful tool it can be. Because I don't think that purpose should not be a tool. But it is certainly something that drives a lot of engagement in the teams, and most of the people in the teams were really happy to do this every time. They saw this as, nobody was taking vacation for this. Nobody was saying, oh, I spent one day. We were actually giving free vacation against the time that they would be spending, the private time they would be spending in these camps, but nobody really took them. They said, no, look, it's part of what we're supposed to do, and it's part of the reason why we're here. And you realize how powerful it can be to, drive engagement, drive motivation within the teams, because, you come back from these one-day camps. I can always remember a very good colleague of mine. His name is Tamas. We went together to really difficult areas of Africa. We went to Angola together, and we went into a very, very difficult neighborhood one day. We spent a couple of hours there, and we came back and we were in our nice 4-star, 5-star hotel, having a beer at the bar. And I will always remember what he told me on that day. He said, yeah, that beer tastes a little bit strange because of everything that we had experienced during the day.
Yeah.
You have this feeling that, you shouldn't be entitled to have this because you have other people who are, suffering. So there are powerful things that you can do in life. We're not going to be changing on our own individually the environmental issues, poverty issues, but at least we can try to bring a little brick to that house and try to do a little effort and make sure that we are contributing to better society, I would say. Individually, of course, all of our impact will be so limited, but what we can do as teams, as big conglomerates, big companies, I think this could be quite important.
Yeah. Because one of the fascinating things from your time at Hoya has been, I know some of the leaders in that you've hired and you've brought into that business, and it's clear the ambassadorial work that you've been able to do with your leaders, also taking hold of that mantle for myopia and myopic, challenges. It's clear that passion then really started to transmit into other parts of your leadership team. They were then doing the same to people within their teams. So it's quite a nice legacy to have, left that kind of, feeling. The ambassadorial piece has been really, really interesting to see from afar anyway.
Tommy, it's a bit like all of these things that we talk about when people talk a lot about ESG, about what we call strategic giving, or things that we do on the environmental front. Everybody sees this, not everybody, but many people see this as cost, burden, things that we need to do because it's important to have a CSR strategy when you're a company, for example. But these are things that need to be seen as opportunities. They should not be burdens. They should be our way to contribute, and that contribution will pay back someday. And this is what is really important. Yeah? The interesting thing about myopia is when you look at the statistics, by 2050, 50% of the population will be myopic. Everybody who reads this, if you were working in a completely new market, you'd say this is a massive market opportunity. 5 billion people, right? 5 billion people are going to be myopic, so that means that there is really something that we can do in that market. And there is really something that we should do to make sure that people are not going into strong myopia, which can create different types of eye health issues. So sometimes it just comes out of the obvious. You just have to open your eyes, just look at the numbers, and the numbers are telling you what you're supposed to be talking about. So taking that topic was, I would say a bit unique, notably because we were talking about preventing the progression of myopia for children. So from a societal perspective, it's a pretty important contribution. It's very emotional as people because we love to do things for children in general. But even normal business sense would tell you there's definitely something that we need to do here, right? So,
Yeah.
we shouldn't see these things as burdens, or we shouldn't see these things as us getting out of our way. They actually very often even make a lot of business sense. It's not that complicated.
Yeah, and because for me it's been quite an interesting, you know, interesting journey understanding how you have linked creating opportunity, creating purpose, okay, and then you have a slightly different leadership style. And you've told me once before that you try to be as lazy as possible. So how do you do that? It's just fantastic. All of these, as you said, these bricks that you're kind of putting in, these foundational steps, does that all come together in a moment where you've, delegated and empowered so much that you can actually now step back and let the experts in your team do it?
As leaders, I think that we're doing advocacy work. And we're certainly trying to show the way or try to inspire the people by telling them there's definitely something that we can do in a specific area. And this is where we want to differentiate, for example. I think one of the most important things for a company today in businesses where that become more and more generic, the differentiation through innovation is getting more and more difficult. You need to find your area of differentiation. And you need to build a story for the company and explain, this is where I want to go. This is where I think we should go. Of course, you don't do this on your own. You do this with your team. And once it's done, the only thing you can do is do advocacy, awareness in a way, and connect with your team members to ask them what they need. And Tom, that's all I know how to do. I'm not an expert at anything. I'm pretty poor at finance. I'm not really that good at marketing either. I had a law major in business school, believe it or not, which sounds completely strange, right? And I'm really not good at law either. So I'm not good at anything. I'm just good at bringing experts around me, talking to them, getting, I would say, the essence of what they see as opportunities moving forward, build a story out of it, run with that story, and then let the people do what they're supposed to do. I cannot do what they're doing. They are so much better at everything that they do than I could ever become. And I think that's why I tend to say that I like to be lazy. I don't want to do, I don't even want to try to do what they're doing because I will never be able to do it as well as they are. And this is what our role is. Our role is, show the way, hope that you're not completely wrong, adjust it a bit, along the lines if you have the feeling that, there's a bit of a misdirection that you have taken, and make sure that your team members are empowered, both from a, I would say, organizational standpoint, resource standpoint, and that they're embracing, I would say, the vision and the mission of the company and running with it as well. There's not much you can do on your own. Yeah? And I think that all of the leadership that you have, or that I had around me, I probably should be thinking the same way, especially when you're in a 20,000 people company. there is no way 15 or 16 people will be able to get that message down across the whole organization. We need to be all collectively working on it.
Vision, mission, purpose, space. But also, I know some of your leadership team as well that you've worked very closely, and they always felt empowered to ask stupid
Yeah,
questions.
so important.
How did you create that space and like ability for people to say, "Hey, hang on, this is a stupid question"?
Because if you don't allow people to ask stupid questions, you never learn. so, and and lots of these stupid questions, or what I like to call stupid questions, were actually very, very valid comments. When you have been like me in the same industry for 7 or 18 years, you end up having your preconceived ideas about everything. I'm 50. I have become really stubborn, stupid. I believe that I know lots of things that other people don't know, but I actually need to be constantly challenged. And sometimes some of these stupid questions, they come and you're like, hey, yeah, I feel back, I actually should have realized this. Or, with all of the stuff that I know about this industry and the business and what I've done until now, I should have been looking into this on my own. I should have known this myself, How stupid am I? But this is important. And you need to be able to create a space where people can simply freely discuss and again, ask whatever question that they feel, because there's massive learnings out of it. There's many people know him, I guess. There's a philosopher called Socrates who many, many years ago, thousands of years ago, said, the only thing that I know is that I don't know anything. And I think that's a very powerful statement. And I think we should all try to keep that at the back of our mind. I'm saying this while not being the best at doing it either, but I think it's a good direction to take. It's something that we should always remember. We don't know that much in reality. So
I, I agree. I totally agree with you. We know what we know and we don't know what we don't know. I think for you to have the confidence in your team as well means that you've hired people with the right integrity, transparency, and empathy throughout those processes, which gives you the ability to have worked extremely hard to then be as lazy as possible. So I think it's a great line, and I think it's super empowering as well for all of those people within your team that have spoken so highly about the work that you've done with them as well over the years. So my next questions now, I suppose, are more aligned to the future of leadership. Okay, so what does the future hold for that part of the life sciences industry first? And then how do you think, you know, leaders are going to have to change over the next coming years?
So as a general statement, I think that, and I want to say something that is really you know, everybody talks about AI these days, and we all know that AI is going to be profoundly transforming all of the things that we're doing, because not only will it enable us to be more efficient at diagnosing potential issues, but it'll also be probably helping us to identify when we should start treatments, when we should start to act with people to make sure that they have a better better life and improved overall life conditions. I think that because of the speed at which things are going these days, and when we see the changes that have been happening in the past 5 years and the speed at which they have been happening, it really requires us to be more humble than ever, because what we think is true today will probably not be true anymore in 6 to 12 months. Maybe 20 years ago we would have said what is true today will probably not be true anymore in 5 years or 10 years. But I think now that time span has shortened a lot. So it's a lot about, I would say, staying curious, staying connected to what is happening out there. There's a lot of things happening on the technology front. I try sometimes to, I do little runs in the morning. So my passion is wine. So every other day, I listen to something related to AI, and every other day I listen to something related to wine. So that's how I'm that's my current balance. And it's a complex, these are complex topics, but I think we need to stay in touch with what is happening, because things are going to be changing really, really fast. And we need to stay connected with experts. We need to make sure that we are either educating our internal teams the right way, or bringing new talent on board to help us actually understand all of these new challenges that we'll be facing. But I think the opportunities are huge because of the fact that if we do things right, as companies, societies, we actually have an even higher chance to be able to be impactful and change the lives of people. One of the key issues that I see, and when I hear different forums and different discussions, one of the key challenges that we have is the cost of innovation is actually increasing. Incremental innovation is always extremely expensive. I mean, when you look at the numbers that they're talking about now, the investments that they need to do in AI to make sure that it's reaching the same level, it's crazy numbers. Okay, the Chinese have brought this down by about 50-fold, but the cost of innovation has become extremely, extremely high, and I hope that we'll still be able, despite the increase of that cost, to keep healthcare in general affordable to most of the people. That is really one of the key challenges that we'll have, I would say, in the years to come. I think we're getting better at what we're doing, but I'm not sure we're making it more affordable, and that's a point of focus that we need to keep, I think, in this industry.
And what about leadership? So, what piece of advice would you give to any leaders out there forward facing when it comes to the future of leadership, as an example?
We'll go back to the few principles that I have been giving earlier on. I think it's very, very important to show empathy more than ever. I mean, especially when you listen to what we have been listening to in the past few weeks, right? The discussions that are happening on the political front. It has become so violent. It has become so
Toxic.
Disrespectful, and very, very difficult to listen to just as a listener. And as a member of society as well, because we really wonder where are things going to be. I think we need to bring back that level of empathy and make sure that we're listening to the people's needs, because at the end, we just want them to be successful because their success is what's going to be bringing success to us as well as leaders. So that empathetic approach is very, very important. And as I was mentioning earlier on, transparency to me is really, really an important aspect. Over all of my career, I have realized that many people are underestimating the value of transparency. We always think that, you cannot talk about this with people, or no, this part we should keep between us, or this we should not be talking about in that forum, or this is a bit information that we can share with maybe our top 200 people, but not our 20,000 employees. And I had a very interesting. There's a teacher called Kevin Kaiser, who's at Wharton University, who has written a very, very good book that has been very important to me in my life. That was called the Blue Line Imperative. It's all about blue line management. And I went one day to one of his classes at INSEAD. He said, you need, for the organization to be successful, you need to build trust in the organization. And if you believe that there's that many topics that you cannot talk about with your people, then you have a problem of trust. In this case, get rid of them. If you don't trust them, then get rid of them. But don't start to filter too much, because you want to make sure that you have a lot of, clarity about what you're trying to achieve, about what your strategy is, about the goals that are important as an organization. And he said, fundamentally, you should always trust that the people that you're talking to will be supporting you, and that they can very well take that information, understand that it's confidential, and they will know very well what to do with it. It's not always true, right? But that's not the point. It's about the mindset. The mindset of transparency, clarity in what you're trying to achieve. I think it brings a huge amount of value to every organization. And connected to what you have been mentioning earlier on during our discussion, when you look at how do you make a company performing, if you want to be able to do proper performance management with your people, they need to understand what you're trying to achieve. It's not because you put 3 or 4 goals into their yearly goals and objectives sheet that they will necessarily understand why you're actually putting these goals and objectives. But if you give them the context, if you give them visibility about what you're trying to achieve, then all of these goals that you're giving to them and the objectives that you're giving to them become obvious to them. And this is how you can build a performing organization. People are aligned with what you're trying to achieve, and they know very well why you're asking them, or you're defining these things as being a key priority. And they say, yeah, of course it makes sense. And I think it's really important.
Yeah. And also, I think, as you said, with all those foundational layers of the purpose, the vision, the mission, the space, the empowerment, the trust, all of these things culminate to an extremely successful team, and in your case, an extremely successful career. I mean, some of this has been absolutely fascinating. You know, before we go, I've just got one question that might be quite different for you, because obviously you quite like taking a risk or two. But if you could go back and talk to your younger self in that first leadership role, what would you tell them?
The first thing I would tell them is, you're doing the right thing, my friend. And the second thing that I would tell them is, as I was mentioning earlier on, make sure that you keep a little bit of time to yourself. And I have a habit today that I have probably started about, I would say 6 or 7 years ago, because I realized how important it is. So my CFO, Ian Wells, whom you know quite well, was joking about it quite a few times. I told him when we met for the first time, I said, Ian, never call me after 6 p.m. on Fridays, because 6 p.m. is the moment when I go to my wine fridge, I pull out a bottle, and I drink a glass of wine. And Ian has been calling this now the wine o'clock time. So he always knew very well, never organize a call with Alex after 6 p.m. on Fridays. And I make sure that I'm not doing anything, except if there is an emergency. I don't do anything between Friday at 6 p.m. and Monday morning at 7 a.m. Nothing at all. It's very, very important to stay disconnected from what you do at work. Spend time with your family, your friends, the things that you're passionate about. And that would probably be the first advice that I would give to myself. It would probably be making my life a little bit easier in the first few years, but I'm sure it probably would have made me. I'm not sure if it would have made me more successful, but it would probably have brought much more balance into my life, I would say. So that is what I would recommend. But I'd definitely tell him, go for it, my friend.
Yeah, good. That's exactly what I was going to say. You seem like the kind of person that you've pushed yourself, you've taken the opportunities as they've come to you, or, asked your mother to help you get a new job here and there. But it seems like it's been, one hell of a ride where you have created and taken opportunity in equal measure. I think this has been an absolutely fantastic episode. It's really clear your passion for the industry, your passion for leadership, your passion for people. And yeah, I've absolutely loved it. It's been thoroughly enjoyable. Thank you so much for your time today. And I'm sure the listeners will be having a great time taking a lot of the information that you've shared today. So thank you very much.
That was Alexandre Montague. What a brilliant conversation. From launching businesses in Japan from scratch to leading global organizations of 20,000 plus people, Alex's leadership journey is a testament, I think, to the power of trusting your team, staying curious and creating space for others to grow. I especially loved that philosophy of trying to be as lazy as possible. It's not out of complacency, but as a call, I think, to delegate, empower, and get out of the way of the real experts and let them thrive, I would say. So if you're a leader navigating complex markets or wondering how to lead with both impact and empathy, there is a hell of a lot to take away from this episode. Also, if you're curious about Japan, give it a listen. So thanks for listening to Active Ingredients. I'll see you next time.